Hi, I'm Paul Kyogan from GK Tuition, and in this video I want to talk to you about complex numbers. Now the question that I've chosen to go through here is 2015 Paper 1 Question 4 Part A. In this question we're told that 2 over Z1 is equal to 1 over Z2 plus 1 over Z3. We're told that Z2 is 2 plus 3i and that Z3 is 3 minus 2i. The question then asks us to find Z1. So you should recognize that I've subbed in for Z2 and I've subbed in for Z3. I've got one equation, one unknown, so I'll be able to simplify this and find my Z1. Now for the moment there's nothing we can do with the left hand side, so what I'm going to do is ignore the left hand side and just worry about my right hand side. If I'm adding or subtracting fractions, the easiest thing to do is to get a common denominator. So on the right hand side here I'm going to get a common denominator. And my common denominator is 2 plus 3i times 3 minus 2i. Okay, now I need to worry about what's going to be my numerator. So I have a 1 on top of the first fraction, and I have to ask myself, how many times does 2 plus 3i go into my denominator? 2 plus 3i into my denominator goes 3 minus 2i times. Then I add in a plus 1, because that's my numerator on this side, and I ask myself, how many times does 3 minus 2i go into my common denominator? And it goes in 2 plus 3i. Okay, so now we can simplify the bottom and we can simplify the top. So on the top I can just add like terms. I have a 3 here and I have a 2 here, so that means I've got a 5. And my i's, I've got minus 2i plus 3i, which gives me just plus I. But on the bottom I can multiply out my double brackets. The first thing in the first bracket by the second bracket is 6 minus 4i. The second thing in the first bracket by the second bracket is 9i minus 6i squared. Okay, so on the top, clearly there's nothing I can do on the top because I don't have any like terms. But on the bottom, you should recognize that I have a number of like terms. So first of all, I have a 9i and I have a minus 4i. 9i minus 4i is going to give me plus 5i. And now you need to recognize that 6 and minus 6i squared are like terms. Because when we're dealing with complex numbers, I squared is equal to minus 1. Which means that minus 6 times I squared is actually minus 6 times minus 1. Minus 6 times minus 1 is plus 6. So this is actually just a plus 6. So I have 6 plus 6, which means that the number on the bottom is 12. So if you want to take that down, I'm going to start again from the top. Okay, so I've just continued on from where we left off. I have 2 over Z1, except I've simplified the right-hand side to one fraction. Now on the next line, I've decided to get the reciprocal of both of them, purely because it'll just be easier if my unknown is on the top of the fraction. Now when you're at this step, you need to recognize that your problem is you have an imaginary number on the bottom of your fraction. So the first thing I need to do is get rid of the imaginary number on the bottom of my fraction. So what do I need to multiply 5 plus I by to get rid of the imaginary number? If I multiply 5 plus I by its conjugate, 5 minus I, then I'll be left with just real numbers. But I can't just randomly multiply the bottom of a fraction by 5 minus I. If I'm multiplying the bottom by 5 minus I also have to multiply the top by 5 minus I. Because if you just look at this fraction, I'm multiplying by 5 minus I over 5 minus I, which is clearly 1. So I'm not actually changing the value of the expression. So the reason I'm doing this is to get rid of my imaginary numbers on the bottom of the fraction. So again, let's just ignore the left-hand side for the moment because we're only dealing with the right-hand side. On the top line, I've got double brackets. 12 plus 5i by 5 minus I. So if I multiply that out, the first thing in the first bracket by the second bracket is 60 minus 12i. The second thing in the first bracket by the second bracket is plus 25i minus 5i squared. And I want to do the same thing on the bottom. 5 plus I multiplied by 5 minus I. So I want to take the first thing in the first bracket, multiply it by the second bracket. You get 25 minus 5i. The second thing in the first bracket by the second bracket is plus 5i minus I squared. Now, this is the important bit. The reason I multiplied 5 plus I by 5 minus I was because I knew that this was going to happen. That I'd end up with a plus 5i and a minus 5i. Or in other words, the imaginary numbers would cancel out and I'd be left with a real number on the bottom of my fraction. So let's just continue on. 25i minus 12i is 13i. And 60, remember this is minus 5 by minus 1. Minus 5 by minus 1 is plus 5. So 5 plus 60 is 65. So my top is just 65 plus 13i. And minus I squared is minus by minus 1, which is a plus 1. So the bottom of my line is 25 plus 1, which is 26. So now I can say that Z1 over 2 is equal to 65 plus 13i over 26. So it's going to be relatively straightforward to get my Z1 here. I just want to get rid of the 2 on the left-hand side. So what I want to do is multiply both sides by 2. If I multiply both sides by 2, on the left-hand side, I'm just left with Z1. And on the right-hand side, 65 by 2 is 130. 13 by 2 is 26. So I get 26i. And I'm dividing both of those by 26. Now, you should recognize that I'm going to get just whole numbers here. 26 into 130 is 5. 26 goes into 130 5 times, and 26 into 26i is just plus I. So my final answer in this case is just 5 plus I. So I think the one thing that I want to highlight there is this. In so many questions, in order to get rid of the imaginary number on the bottom of the fraction, you multiply top and the bottom by the conjugate of the bottom. So again, I hope this video made sense. If there's anything there you're unsure of, then just send me an email or let me know in class, and I'll try and explain it differently.